Imagine waking up before sunrise to the sound of air raid sirens. You rush out of bed, grab a small bag, and run toward a crowded shelter with your family. No one knows if their home will still be standing when the bombing ends. Breakfast isn't waiting on the table because food is being rationed. Your father is away fighting in the war, and every knock on the door could bring news that changes your life forever. This wasn't a nightmare. For millions of people between 1939 and 1945, this was everyday life during World War II. Today, let's step back in time and discover what it was really like to live through the deadliest war in human history. When World War II began in 1939, life changed almost overnight. Men left their families to join the military. Train stations were filled with emotional goodbyes as mothers, wives, and children watched their loved ones disappear into an uncertain future. Many believed the war would end quickly. Instead, it spread across Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Pacific, drawing dozens of nations into a conflict that would last nearly 6 years. Soon, ordinary people found themselves on the front lines, even if they never carried a weapon. One of the biggest challenges was simply finding enough to eat. Governments introduced ration books, limiting how much meat, bread, butter, sugar, eggs, and fuel each person could buy. Families carefully planned every meal. Nothing was wasted. People planted vegetables in backyards, parks, and empty lots. These became known as victory gardens. Children collected scrap metal, paper, and rubber to support the war effort. Every small contribution mattered. For children, growing up during World War II meant growing up much faster than they should have. Schools were often interrupted by air raid warnings. In some countries, children were evacuated from dangerous cities and sent to live with strangers in safer rural areas. Many had to say goodbye to their parents for months or even years. Some children never saw their fathers return home. Yet despite the fear, they still found moments to play, laugh, and dream of a peaceful future. As millions of men fought on the battlefield, women stepped into jobs that had once been closed to them. They worked in factories building tanks, aircraft, and ammunition. They became nurses, drivers, mechanics, and radio operators. Others managed farms, businesses, and households while raising children alone. Their work kept entire countries functioning throughout the war. World War II permanently changed the role of women in many societies. In many cities, darkness became a form of protection. Streetlights were switched off. Windows were covered with blackout curtains so enemy bombers could not easily spot cities from above. When sirens sounded, families hurried into underground shelters. People waited in silence, listening to the explosions outside. Sometimes they emerged to find their homes damaged or completely destroyed. Still, the next morning, life had to continue. Even during the darkest years of the war, people refused to give up hope. Letters from soldiers brought comfort to families. Neighbors shared food with those who had little. Music, books, and small celebrations reminded people that life was worth living. Communities supported one another through unimaginable hardship. It was this courage, not just military victories, that helped millions survive. Realized that life would never be the same again. Every day began with uncertainty. A simple knock on the front door could bring a telegram with devastating news. Many families feared opening the door, knowing it might be an official message announcing that a son, husband, brother, or father had been killed in battle. For soldiers serving thousands of miles from home, life was equally difficult. Months passed without seeing their families. The only connection they had was through handwritten letters, which often took weeks to arrive. Every letter became a priceless reminder that someone back home was still waiting for them. Meanwhile, cities across Europe and Asia continued to suffer relentless bombing. Homes, schools, hospitals, factories, and even historic landmarks were reduced to rubble. Families who had spent years building their lives suddenly found themselves with nothing except the clothes they were wearing. Millions of people were forced to leave their homes. Some escaped advancing armies, while others fled destroyed cities in search of food, shelter, and safety. Long lines of refugees stretched across roads carrying small bags, children, and whatever belongings they could save. Hospitals became overwhelmed with wounded soldiers and civilians. Doctors and nurses worked around the clock with limited medicine and equipment. Many had to make impossible decisions about who could be treated first. Despite the destruction, ordinary people refused to give up. Volunteers searched through collapsed buildings to rescue survivors. Communities shared food, clothing, and shelter with complete strangers. Teachers continued educating children wherever they could, sometimes in underground shelters or damaged buildings. Faith, friendship, and hope became powerful sources of strength. Families celebrated birthdays with tiny homemade cakes, children played simple games using handmade toys, and neighbors gathered to encourage one another. These small moments reminded people that humanity could survive even during the darkest times. By the final months of the war, exhaustion had spread everywhere. Soldiers longed to return home, families prayed for peace, and entire nations dreamed of the day when the sound of explosions would finally be replaced by silence. Everyone knew one thing: the world had changed forever, and no matter who won the war, millions of lives would never return to the way they had been.
If you enjoyed this journey into history, don't forget to like the channel and join us for more incredible stories from the past.